Hey guys, so welcome back for another. I think this is going to be a more interesting video, mostly because instead of focusing on a book, we're going to actually be focusing on a movie. And in fact, we're going to be focusing on three movies. We are going to be touching on Johnny Guitar, we're going to be focusing on Psycho, and we're going to be focusing on The Innocent. Now, these movies are quite old. In fact, I think the most recent one was in the 1960s, and the oldest one was actually in the early 1950s. So these are fairly old movies, but yet they have a very interesting concept in them, which I'd really like to get into today. And so today is going to be a bit different, and to be very clear here at the front of the video, there are going to be spoilers, there are going to be things that are going to be told. So if you would rather watch the movies and not get the ending spoiled or have important plots spoiled, I recommend you stop the video now and go watch them. They don't take too horribly long compared to stuff like the Avengers movies. So they run about, an hour, hour and a quarter. So I just recommend that you go watch them and then come back. I'll be here so you can just hit the pause button. And other than that, we will get right into today's video. So today's video is going to be interesting because we're going to be focusing on feminism and other things. So you might have probably have saw the description or the title as something a little weird, being, saying against women. But all three of these movies, in fact, I have all three here. Um, it is absolutely astonishing whenever you read or you watch these movies and you look at how characters are placed. Now, to give a very brief overview, so we don't have a 6 hour long video. So, Johnny Guitar takes is a Western film, and it tells the tale of Vienna, who owns a saloon in the West, and her battle with another woman named Emma. Now, these two women are having conflict, and there's so many things. So, this movie alone would be a very interesting video to make. But it is, we see everything from murders to robberies to all the way up to a gunfight that really is the high climax of the movie. Now, the next one is Psycho, which I I hope that you guys have at least watched or have watched the Netflix special or movie series called The Bates Motel, which I think is actually now it has like several seasons. So that in itself is absolutely astonishing about a woman named Marion, who actually steals a whole bunch of money and goes to the Bates Motel. It is kind of her in between spot as she's now on the run now that she stole several $1,000s from her job. And she, of course, meets the very critically acclaimed Norman Bates, who ends up killing her within, the first half of the movie. And so we see the rest of the movie is very much a depiction of how, you know, people try to put the pieces together, and there's a very dramatic ending where we just see everything blown to bits. And for somebody to watch, especially looking at the movie through a feminist lens, is absolutely mind boggling. I highly recommend it, especially if you are going to watch it and try and look at it through a feminist lens, you know, or a psychoanalytical lens, which I think is more overdone, but I definitely recommend watching the movie and thinking about it through a feminist lens. Finally, there's The Innocent. Now, I don't know how many people have probably watched this movie. I really don't know of anybody that watched it, before I did. But it is very much the depiction of a governess who is watching two kids and her trial, between trying to cope with seeing these apparitions and spirits and trying to protect the children that she is assigned to, you know, kind of basically govern over. And there is once again a very extensive ending, and I highly recommend if you cannot deal with kids screaming, if you can't deal with something like that, it's very much not a good movie to watch for you, but it is an absolutely amazing movie. So now that we've kind of did a brief overview, where do we go? How do we look at these through a feminist lens, and how do we look at it through a bad feminist lens? Well, we look at really what happens to these characters. We have Vienna, we have the governess, and we have Marion. Very much, these women are very much going against the grain. These women have either committed a crime, these women are demanding to have power, in a man's world, or, these women are very much, saying, I'm in charge, I think I know what's best, which, especially for the 1950s, 60s, that is a very risky thing to do. And what we see is some very harsh realities. We see Marion die in, Psycho. We see the governess actually end up killing one of the children. And in Johnny Guitar, we end up seeing Vienna not just lose her saloon, she also loses her several of her friends. She is, in the middle of this huge gunfight, and she almost loses the guy that she falls in love with. And there's this very dramatic and dynamic, instances where very much the things that these people care about, or the things that these people are trying to do, are ruined. And because these characters are driving themselves to do what is not appropriate according to the times that these movies take place in. Of course, in something like Johnny Guitar, there is the male, you know, we have Johnny who comes and rescues Vienna from being, slaughtered by, the mob that's outside her house. Now, what do we do with something like this? How do we look at this and say, this is a feminist thing, or, how do we, evaluate this? Honestly, I think there's more to it. The power that lies within these movies gives the women an extensive amount of power, especially for things that were going on during this time. Now, of course, we look at, Johnny Guitar, where we have one of my favorite, movie stars of her time. We have Joan Crawford, one of the most astonishing actors. She played in movies like Mildred Pierce. She played in so many movies, and of course, I would really enjoy one day making a movie of or a video about some of the things that she has done, because she is astonishing. But we see her not just own a saloon, we don't just see her, fighting against Emma, who, in her own right, is a powerful feminist figure. These two women very much control their communities. We see Emma in Johnny Guitar very much controlling the town. She is able to have control over the sheriff, she has control over the banks. She has very much centralized the power within herself. Then we see Vienna, excuse me, we see Vienna, who is able to really come to a point where she is able to have not just her own saloon, but she has, you know, is able to do gambling, she has alcohol, very much has created this entire economy around her and shows the foresight of things like the railroad coming to the town and very much setting herself up that she can benefit, that she's able to make a profit. And one of the first scenes that we see in this movie is Vienna standing at the top of her saloon up this grand stairway, and we have all the other characters down on the base floor looking up at her, and she proves her power when she looks down and tells everybody that it would be a grave mistake to cross her. Where else can we ever see a feminist movie where the female character is not just, in the storyline above them, but she is able to stand on the top of a stairway, look down at the other characters, and very much make a threat against them. And it completely, you know, blew my mind when I first saw this. Now, in the end, yes, we end up seeing Vienna Saloon. It is burned down by the mob, and that was led by Emma. Then we also see Vienna lose, a lot of her friends, including four of the guys that pretty much were acting as her security, kind of. Um, Very much there's weird relationships there, and we see how this powerful woman is not just brought to her knees, but has everything leveled before her. And then she continues to fight and she rises above. And Joan Crawford plays a wonderful Vienna and very much proves that if you mess with her, in the end, she proves that she will end them. One of the most iconic lines in the movie is between Vienna and Emma, and we see Vienna make the threat, or Emma make the threat to Vienna that she will kill her. And how does Vienna respond? Not if I kill you first. It is one of the most powerful scenes in the entire movie because it very much lays the groundwork that says we're going to fight each other and one of us is not going to walk away. So we see these two powerful women go head to oh, mercy. Just go head to head, battle it out. And we see this just com- complete change compared to most westerns, which very much situate the women as either needing to be rescued or that the women have to be these supporting characters for the men. Now, yes, it is called Johnny Guitar, and we do have Johnny and everything in it, but we don't really see as much of a power role in any of the men in this movie. It is all about the women, it is all about the power within the women, and what ends up happening is very much the classic Western battle, except it is between two powerful women. Now, how does this relate to some of the two other movies that I mentioned? Well, these two movies are overwhelmingly great when it comes to understanding both feminism and understanding the relations, especially during this time, about both feminism and the Hollywood kind of setting that is being built there, as well as many other cities and movements at this time. So, the next interesting thing that I really want to talk about is the innocent. Now, this is very much a movie where there's a lot of mind games, there's a lot of stuff going on. And if you have ever read the book The Turning of the Screw. This is the movie adaptation, one that I very much recommend. You read both the book and watch the movie. And it is absolutely interesting how it plays out, and the concept of both feminism as well as the twist. We see this twist of, you know, what happens whenever we can't really tell the difference between mental illness and female power. And it very much makes us, as the audience, question who's really right here. Now, we are really not given too many names, especially the female lead in this movie, who we just kind of get this name of the governess. Now, she is watching over two small children whose uncle is unable to watch them, but both their parents are dead. And the question very rapidly becomes, after a while, is the governess really seeing these ghosts of the parents who still hold power over their children? And are the children possessed? Or is all of this really just in the governess's head? Now, as a feminist reading of this movie, it's very clear that we really can't understand what's going on. We are seeing what the governess is seeing, and we see this woman that wishes to not harm the children. Instead, one of the most touching moments in the entire film is between the governess and another character. And what the governess says is, "Please do not judge me until you see the children when I'm done." This is about 20 minutes before the sheer climax and heavy fall of the movie, where we slam down to the end that very much feels very, confusing and at the same time painful. We see the child die shortly after, within 20 minutes of watching the governess profess that, we can't judge her until, she is done. And yet we see her job fail. But is there something more here? A powerful woman is able to do so much, and yet in this movie, she is forced to choose how she wants to help. Does she go and talk to the uncle who has no time? Does she try her best to get a priest or get another male figure? Or does she solve it herself? We see her do her best to save one child who very much almost seems to have a mental collapse after the quote unquote spiritual break happens, where the little girl is no longer connected to the female ghost. But what do we do after we see her almost kill a child? Possibly the most interesting part of this movie is a woman who, in no way, shape, or form, is connected to these children, taking them under her wing and seeing a problem. She has no reason to try and harm the child. Rather, we are very much watching it as a story being told not even through the governess's eyes, but instead from somebody who employs her later. In fact, she got another governess job. She is able to still take care of children. So there is something here. A strong female character that takes care of the children, and yet one dies, and she still gets another job. This leaves us the question of, maybe she does have something. We see the characters that she sees, the evil man and the horrid laugh. We see the connections that we can make between those that are dead and the children. And her desire to free the children very much leaves us, the audience, questioning what could we do? Would we have done the same situation? Would we have pushed both ourselves and the children to the point where they're free, even if that might mean they die? As a feminist reading, a woman's job is to protect those that are around her and to show her power by rising to the occasion. She does, but it costs a life. So, does this mean that she's a bad feminist character? Or does this mean that she does her best with the limited materials that she's given, and she is surrounded by those who can't help her or the children? I think that it's possibly both. This situation where a female character takes care of children and sees a problem, isolated, she does what she can, even if that means bad results. Accidents happen, and yet later on, people realize that maybe she was in the right, and she gets another chance, and she raises children, and that's who's telling the story, is somebody who hired her afterwards. But the movie's end shows just the care and, at the same time, a bit confusion, as one of the closing moments we see the governess kiss her dead child's lips, very much making everybody uncomfortable. But at the same time, it raises questions of, what do you do in a situation where the people you care about and love, the ones that you so badly were dedicated to protect, are now dead? This can be read as a parent in trauma, a strong female character that feels that she has failed, and as a result, is forced to try and accept the death of a child. All right, so now we get to come to probably one of the most interesting readings, which was a feminist reading of Psycho. Now, for anybody that's watched the movie, probably one of the highest scenes in the movie is when we see the shower scene when Norman Bates kills Marion. Now, at the same time, we very much look at it as, this man kills a woman. But there's also these questions of, she did steal. She did all this other stuff that makes her out to be a bad character. Or does it? During this time, women had very little options. A very good depiction of what's really going on is Mildred Pierce. What happens when a woman tries her best to rise to the occasion of what's around her, and she's very much left with very little. Marion is in a job where she's a secretary, but she doesn't get very good, benefits. She's not paid a lot, and she has to put up with some very, we'll say, interesting interactions. A female character that very much takes the power and money from the men around her who abuse her, who make her life difficult, and then she runs. Now, there are questions about what she really would have done with the money, where she would have went, but I don't think that that's the question we should really be asking. It should be, what does it take for a understanding of a female character who is surrounded by nothing and is harmed and has nowhere to go? Whether it is a dead end surroundings that leaves her uncomfortable, hurt, and abused, all the way to a woman that is battered, a woman who is in a bad relationship. Where do you go with a character like this? Did Marion have a right to steal the money and run? I think that the killing of Marion is very much this setting where we see how horrible her actions were and then the response. But later on, we find out that Norman has killed multiple women. that Marion is not the only one. In fact, Marion is one of three. In the movie, this depiction very much comes to the realization that Norman has killed innocent people, oftentimes people that he, along with his mother, have decided are women of desire. Instead, they are not being viewed through a negative light. Rather, they are people who simply just enter the life of somebody who does something absolutely horrible. These women had nothing wrong, and by the simple addition of Marion, we can see the understanding that maybe in a feminist reading, Marion was escaping, finding a new life. And so we can make the argument maybe Marion was doing the right thing. It is quite quick to understand that Marion took the money, several $1,000s, 40,000 in fact, and she ran. But is murder really the answer? I think that's the interesting thing about all these movies, and it comes to the most interesting climax here in this video when we see what happens when we find the reality about Norman. His mother has been dead for upwards of 10 years, and yet his mother still controls him. Strong women have power, but yet they are limited in truly what they can do. It comes to light that Norman's mother dies of natural causes, but there are also questions. Did she really die of natural causes, or did he snap, killing both her and the man that she was dating at the time? The conflict here is that women are struggling, that they are in positions of power, and the people around them do not want to see this. For Vienna, it is Emma, another struggling woman who has power and will do whatever it takes to maintain that. For the innocents, we see a governess who has power and is doing her best to care for children. In Psycho, we see how Mother, using all of her power and control over Norman, pushes him to the limit. A man that is unable to comprehend what truly lies within a female's ability to rule. And then we see Marion, a woman who just desperately needed an escape. In the end, she died. Now, in these three movies, we see very different results. We see murder, we see women go head to head, and we also see women that are going face to face with men, doing their best to care for both the people around them and for themselves, rising above the occasion that has set them back all this time. Now, of course, to try not to make this video hours long, I have linked several very good articles that I got so much of my resources from, and I highly recommend that you guys check them out. You can go to places like the JSTOR or just look up the articles. But I think that the more interesting part is whenever you watch these movies and question them, look at them through a feminist view. What does it mean to be a powerful woman, and what does it mean for a woman to have equality in a situation where there is none? The West was not a place where many women had power. In the market and in most businesses until fairly recently, women were not at the table. And the only place that women really ever had a place of power was in cleaning positions or in governess jobs. What they're left with is very slim pickings, and They do whatever it takes to protect what's around them. So maybe instead of viewing these movies as these grandeurs or these positions where women are put to the test or that they commit horrible crimes and that it is a battle of good and evil, maybe it should be seen as a battle of what's right. The difference being who's on the side of right and who's on the side of wrong. Everybody believes that they're on the side of right, but it's a different face whenever that person is somebody that still suffers from the disparities today. I hope that you all enjoyed today's video, and I encourage you to watch these 3 movies. Have a wonderful day, and peace, love, and joy.